Howdy there, folks. I want to share some big news with you guys, and I think this is really important. I was just thinking about this, and I was like, man, I can't believe it took me this long for it to really hit me on kind of what I'm seeing out there and why this is so dang important for the markets, for stocks, for valuations, for if you're expecting a crash in stocks or a big rebound in stocks and all those sorts of things. So if we think for a moment about the market, right? There's been obviously, a lot of worries recently. The two core worries in the market have been around the Fed. What's the Fed going to do, right? First off, obviously, everybody's expecting anywhere between 4 and 7 rate hikes. Each rate hike probably being, a quarter percentage, I should say. That's what kind of everybody's expecting as far as that goes. There's been a second kind of overwhelming worry in the market, and that's been around a possibility of a recession. And people are looking at this and they're saying, well, could we have an actual recession? Could we end up in a situation where company earnings tank, revenues go negative, and those sorts of things, right? And we've had a conflicting kind of earnings season out of the big companies. If you think about Apple, amazing earnings. Like, it doesn't get better than that $5 billion beat. Like, just amazing. Tesla's earnings were astronomically great. Like, it can't literally get better than what Tesla reported for numbers. And Elon Musk said, he's expecting 50% plus comfortably, a 50% plus revenue growth for the company in 2022, which is far above the 44% analysts had at that time. That's great news. Google, positive, but then we had some troubling numbers out of guidance out of Amazon. We had some troubling numbers out of Meta platforms. And so those are two massive companies where it's kind of like, okay, PayPal had pretty strong guidance, but their past numbers didn't really excite people. So you have this confusing kind of earnings season going on where folks are looking at this and are like, okay, things are looking pretty good, but then they're looking kind of worrisome over here. You had UPS say on their earnings call, the CEO, Carol of UPS, says, the first week of January, business was basically bad, is what she said. She didn't know where all the customers went, but then business came back roaring. So it's like, okay, things were bad, but then they came back roaring. But you've had this kind of overwhelming kind of feeling about, could we end up in a recession or something like that, right? And real fears, and I can understand the real fears when you have troubling numbers out of companies like FB, troubling numbers out of Amazon as far as guidance goes for this upcoming year, much below what analysts were expecting, and so I can understand that. Now, if we think about the narrative from kind of the bad side, it's, there was a bunch of stimulus money pumped out there in the back half of 2020 into the beginning part of 2021. And because this stimulus money was pumped out there, that helped all companies basically have much better numbers than were expected, right? And that's kind of the narrative of stocks out there, right? And if we think about the perfect stock that would fit this category of being a stimulus winner, right? A stimulus check winner, and a company that, could have prospered because of that. What is that company? Well, Corsair Gaming. Corsair Gaming, there's no other company that got the whole, it's just because people are staying at home and just because stimulus money was pumped out there on why you guys are doing good numbers, essentially. And what Corsair just reported, I got so caught up into essentially what was going on with the stock price after hours and what I felt like was borderline manipulation of the stock price and things like that was going on after hours. I was so caught up in that and just kind of the baseline numbers that I just went on a walk right now and it really just hit me. I just realized, oh my gosh, Corsair just guided to be slightly above what analysts are expecting, which means the world isn't ending. And if a company like Corsair Gaming is expecting likely a midpoint of 5-6% revenue growth this year, roughly, that's pretty darn good for if you're thinking about all the rest of the public companies out there in general, because Corsair Gaming, like I said, it fits that perfect narrative that the short sellers, the bears, the folks that are pessimistic on the market want to put on these stocks, where it's like, hey, they're not going to do well anymore. Their revenues are going to start tanking because there's no stimulus money out there. So what Corsair must be seeing clearly in their numbers and in their data is that business is actually pretty respectable, and that they plan on this year being a pretty respectable year. And I think that's really, really big for this market mentality. And if that's going on for Corsair Gaming, we're going to likely see that from other companies that are reporting earnings. And we're getting into small cap earnings season now. Mid caps too, but small caps especially. Most of pretty much all the mega caps all the mega caps have already reported. Most of the large caps have already reported. So now you're getting into the mids and smalls, which the mids and smalls usually take longer to put their numbers together because this is a big like earnings report, then to year one essentially, and you're doing your guidance for the upcoming year. So this is like a big deal. This is like the biggest quarter pretty much, right? And so now we're getting into the mids and the smalls, and if we consistently start hearing this from the mid caps, the small caps, that it's not the end of the world and that business is actually hanging in there pretty decent, what's going to end up happening is we're going to start seeing small caps and the mids start to move up and move up quite fast. Let's just put it that way. They'll start to move up quite fast, and we'll start to see a rotation into those stocks. I think today in the market was a perfect day where you saw some of this actually play out, where the Russell finally severely outperformed the NASDAQ, S&P, and Dow. And I've been keeping a track of this lately, and it's been hard to come by for the Russell to outperform. And on many days over the past few months, even if the markets were up, the Russell lagged the S&P and almost always lagged the NASDAQ. And now we have this kind of reversal going on, right? Where you see some of these big companies that have prospered kind of having some troubling guidance, right? Meta and Amazon. Apple didn't really want to get into guidance very much at all. Google really didn't, right? And so you have those companies, but then the smalls, if it's not the end of the world, and a lot of these stocks have been already hit 60, 70, 80%, those would be the first stocks to come back. And at the end of the day, if these companies are seeing their numbers come in through January, remember, we're already into the second week of February now, right? We're into the second week of February. If these companies are feeling pretty darn comfortable giving the guidance they're giving, then that means the world isn't ending. And that's pretty amazing when you take into account how high the Rona numbers have been. They went astronomically high in the back half of December and into the, basically January. And now they've started tanking down, which is obviously a great thing for the overall economy, because there's no doubt that had to hurt the economy in some form or fashion, right? And so now we're getting in this situation where you could actually start to see smalls move up. And meanwhile, it doesn't mean mega cap has to move up necessarily in this situation. Mega caps could chill out. Large caps could not go much of anywhere. They don't have to follow through like that. And with a lot of the smalls, it doesn't take that much money to really funnel into those. And usually every single time you're in a market cycle, if you're in a down market cycle, the first thing that's going to get hit, the more speculative stocks, the more risky stocks, right? The more Russell 2000 related stocks, smaller cap stocks in general. Those are always the ones that are going to get hit first. But as you start to come out of that and the market starts to flip, guess what's the first thing to flip? It's always the essentially the stocks that are the smaller caps, seen as the more speculative stocks. And those ones start to flip, then the mids start to flip, and then the last group that really starts to accelerate the run is the mega caps and the large caps. And guess what's the last stocks that have really gotten hit in this whole kind of, I don't want to call it a crash we've been through, but a correction situation, right? We technically hit bear market in the Russell a couple weeks ago, where it was down over 20% from its peak, which puts you in technically a bear market, right? The last stock to really start falling was the mega caps and was the large companies, right? And Apple held decent because their numbers were so good. Google still is several $100s away from its 52-week high. Meta's at right around a 52-week low. I believe it did hit actually a 52-week low today, right? Amazon is still not in a great place with the stock price. It's still several $100s down, from its basically 52-week high. I think probably $500 plus from its 52-week high now, right? And so we know what's happened with PayPal. We know what's happened with Square. And so you're looking at a lot of those stocks that have still been hammered. And I think as long as things don't worsen with the overall economy, right, in any significant manner, I think we're going to start to see smalls start to flip and mids start to flip and be in a situation where those stocks will start to move up. So as far as me in positioning when it comes to a situation like this, I'm not going to try to do anything like call options in this situation, like, I'm going to play some calls because we're about to flip or something like that. I'm not playing that game because you never know. The market can stay irrational for long periods of time. We know the market's trading small cap stocks irrationally low right now, but it doesn't mean it can't stay like that for a few months or something like that. So I'm not going to play anything from a shorter term perspective, like options that expire, super soon or something like that. I'm going to still stay ready. If any of my stocks drop in any meaningful way, I'm going to be ready to pick up shares in those stocks. And I'm just kind of playing it from that perspective. But I think this Corsair earnings is so much better of news than I think the market's going to even really realize right now. And I'm pretty darn excited nonetheless. So hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed to the channel. We also got a massive Valentine's Day sale coming up for the private stock group. Financial Fortress is a great time to take stock market investing very, very serious. If you are not already done that and you don't know how to read financial statements, how to research stocks, all those sorts of things, and get around a group of investors who are very successful in the market. So if you want to basically have that deal sent over to you as soon as it drops, check out the pinned comment down there. Much love as always, guys. And that's about it. Have a great day.